hope he doesn't get the sickness.
My boy Kurt is a stay-at-home dad, watching Disney movies he never had. His daughter digs through all the VHS, crushing the classics in a princess dress. Informed like Scuttle, Kurt's got your ticket, making it real like Jiminy Cricket. Most are off the Captain Hook, but if the Tweedledum, he'll be taking more shots than Bambi's mom. Leaves him raised like Simba, or cracked like the beach dishes. He'll show you a whole new world, you won't need pre-wishes. Stay-at-home Disney dad.
Oh yeah, straight to video and DVD. The voiceover guy asks, who would we be without Winnie the Pooh? Well, the real Christopher Robin Milne would have been better off. See, at age 6, Christopher Robin Milne and Anne Darlington attended Miss Walter's School on the 15th of January 1929. He started Gibbs, a boys' school, later in Sloane Square. In May of 1930, he started boarding school at Boxgrove near Guildford. On this time at boarding school, he said, quote, "For it was now that began my love-hate relationship with my fictional namesake that has continued to this day." See, his father's books were popular, meaning they were well known by his schoolmates, which made Milne a target of bullying by the other children. He later described the poem Vespers about the toddler Christopher Robin saying his evening prayers as one of the works that has brought me over the years more toe-curling, fist-clenching, lip-biting embarrassment than any other. Takes a little shine off Winnie the Pooh, right? Max Keeble's big movie, it's on the stack. Monsters, Inc., 101 Dalmatians 2, Patch's London Adventure, solid. Patch got lost in a sea of spots. And they keep coming. Peter Pan, here we go. Feature presentation, American Legends. I want to re-release this with like a Kid Rock singing the intro, but here we get James Earl Jones in a rocking chair. He seems really angry as he talks about legends and how they shaped America. He mentions how everything on John Henry was large. You know what's large on me? My expectations for this VHS. Nice! First up is John Henry. John Henry started as a slave, but when the slaves were freed, his wife had his chains turned into a hammer for their wedding day. And I feel like the wedding day hammer should have been a tradition that carried on. There's a railroad construction crew who are exhausted, and some bespectacled ginger foreman tries to get them to keep working. Then John Henry shows up and he says, "I'll help. When did you start building railroads?" "Today." Yeah. Montage of everyone building a railroad. Great animation. I feel like we watched this in elementary school or something. Suddenly, and I'm not sure how, but a train is approaching. Oh, it's a steam engine that can pound railroad spikes, and it's gonna take their jobs. The crew tries to tip the thing, but John steadies it back up and says, "I got a challenge." He says if he can beat this machine, the land they were promised is theirs. The tape glitches, but he strokes his wife's face a bunch of times before he races this thing. They're pounding railroad ties and he's beating it, but they get to a giant blockade and Henry has nothing left as the engine starts busting through it. Henry's smoking wife gives him a pep talk and he jumps back into action. What is this animation style? I love it. Anyway, Henry wins but then loses because he dies. But turns out his wife Polly was Prager's and she gave birth to his little boy after he died and they're all happy. Cool, that was fun. I gotta know, you all wanna know, was John Henry a real person? According to Wikipedia, he was. Back to James Earl Jones, he's still pissy. Is this how he always is? I don't know if I've ever seen him like in person for more than 30 seconds. Next short, we look at the hero John Chapman, known to us as Johnny Appleseed. He was a vegetarian that wore a pot on his head. James Earl Jones then pulls an apple from an indoor apple tree and takes a bite, and we go to the cartoon. In 1806, Johnny lived in a farm near Pittsburgh. He was a scrawny fellow. Ah, yeah, this song. The Lord is good to me, so I thank the Lord for the things I need, the sun, the rain, and the apple seed. The Lord is good to me. I haven't thought about that song since I was like 6. He looks like Gaston, if Gaston cycled off the roids. Johnny spends his days tending to his apple trees. Dozens of stagecoaches roll to town now. It's a bunch of settlers. He imagines himself wearing a coonskin hat like Davy Crockett and marching with a gun. Suddenly he hears a voice. It's a premonition who wants to know why he doesn't enlist. Quote, "He won't go west because he doesn't have the muscles or the strength of chest." This weird vision is another ginger with a thick stash and a black coonskin hat. He sings a song about how great apples are. So Johnny Appleseed was schizophrenic? I figured the pot would have kept the voices up, and maybe it's the pot that sent the voices creeping in. They start singing a duet and the ghost spins away like the Tasmanian devil. Johnny sets out to meet the great unknown. Not sure how that apple pep talk sent him on his journey, but like the first short, this is fun to watch. He goes through the dark forest, he comes out the other side, and he found warm, fertile ground. Now the varmints here didn't know if John was friend or foe. That's money. I feel ya. He just started planting apple seed anyway. The varmints didn't like what they were seeing. They don't like no human being. A skunk wanders over to Johnny. The skunk follows behind him, digging up and eating the apple seeds. Johnny chooses kindness and pets the skunk. Pepe Le Pew likes that, and all the other animals come, and they love Johnny because he was the first to come without no knife and no gun. It ends with like a horror movie moment though, where the shot pulls back and his song about the Lord is good to me kind of echoes. Sounds like it's almost underwater. This turned into like a scary movie trope, but here it's genuine. And no, it's not over. It continues. We got a final scene where we see how he fed the pioneers and they honored him. Now they have a square dance with a bunch of white people and one Native American stereotype, and they all try to bite an apple. It's that game, they're trying to bite an apple hanging from a rope, and the apple swings away, and everybody laughs, and one guy accidentally kisses a girl as they both miss the apple, and they end up lip to lip, so she slaps him, and everyone laughs. Forward 40 years, and he's an old man. He planted apple trees, over 100,000 miles square. It was still going. The Tasmanian devil, old man ghost, comes and takes his spirit away. Johnny is dead. He throws a tantrum about being dead, and the animation is still wonderful. They need someone to tend the apple trees in heaven. I've seen this short as well, again, I think in elementary school. And we end with clouds that aren't clouds. They're Johnny's ghost trees. Okay, so was Johnny Appleseed a real person? John Chapman, better known as Johnny Appleseed, was an American pioneer nurseryman who introduced apple trees to large parts of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Ontario, as well as northern countries of present-day West Virginia. James Earl Jones talks about lumberjacks and how at night they would brag about Paul Bunyan, who was 65 axe handles high and had a blue ox named Babe. They talk about Paul Bunyan. He is Paul Bunyan. Man, I have seen this one as well. These are repressed memories. These must have been like on heavy rotation on compilation episodes that would air Sunday nights or something back when I was a kid. The narrator, Lumberjack, finds a giant baby cradle that washed up on the beach. Inside the giant cradle is a giant baby. The whole town adopts him and names him Paul Bunyan. Funny thing about the narrator is that they don't animate his mouth when he talks. So it's like you're reading his mind, and that's weird. So this giant kid goes to school, and we answer the question. To answer the question, he lifts the roof and sees the teacher, who scolds him by saying, "Paul, never raise the roof." And that is a hip-hop sample ready to be used and remixed at any time. At Christmas, the telepath narrator hands out gifts, and they give Paul a double-bladed axe. That's a self-serving gift because he's now in charge of cutting the wood for everyone, for everything, forever. Eventually, Paul bounces, and I can't blame him. We meet another narrator, but this guy's mouth moves when he talks. He tells a story about meeting Paul, and Paul is singing a song about himself and how great he is, as most tall people do. Paul then walks into a blizzard. He built a fire, but it froze, so he built a second fire to melt the first one. He heard a moo, and it was a blue ox, a frozen blue ox. So he unthaws. He wakes up this giant ox. They make huge footprints that they fill with water, and those turned into lakes, and Paul and his ox just did wonders for the area. The next morning, Paul slept in until the ox woke him up, and they started making out. Then they roughhoused all over the countryside, which resulted in like piling up dirt and rocks, so they accidentally formed mountains. All right, they made Yellowstone Falls by accident, apparently. Now the country began to prosper. Up in Canada, however, we had a similar cartoon called The Log Driver's Waltz. It wasn't quite as spectacular. Yeah, it's not the same thing at all, actually. Paul Bunyan's voice actor is famous. Is that James Earl Jones? No, it's Thurl Ravencroft. Oh, it's voice of Tony the Tiger. I should have known that. Suddenly someone comes in with a steam saw, and Paul Bunyan ain't a fan of that at all, because here we cut trees with an axe like this one, and we haul it with a giant blue ox like this one. I can't believe I wrote that sentence. They get into a fight, and it's another man versus machine contest. Who could make the biggest stack of timber in 1 hour? Paul gets beat by 1/4 of an inch. The townspeople sing, poor Paul Bunyan." I'm sure that made him feel better. Paul goes to Alaska, and the Northern Lights up there is actually him and the ox having fun. That's what the Northern Lights are. All right, was he a real person? Yeah, kinda. Historians believe Paul Bunyan was based on an actual lumberjack, Fabien Fortnier, a French-Canadian timberman who moved south and got a job as a foreman of a logging crew in Michigan after the Civil War. The French pronunciation of Jean's full name is believed to have evolved into the surname Bunyan. Next is John Luther Jones, but we know him as Casey Jones, the guy in the hockey mask that nailed April O'Neil. I have questions. Casey is a master train conductor. He also looks a little like Casey at the bat, probably not by accident. We have a song now about how much train conducting this man kicks. A cow wanders onto the tracks, then he jumps off when he sees a Casey a-coming. Some guy ties a blonde to the tracks, and Casey hops off the train to save her. And did that ever happen? Like, not this particular one, but for real, did anyone ever tie a woman to the tracks that wasn't either in this movie or back in like Rocky and Bullwinkle? To find the true origin of the trope, at least in terms of what popularized it, we have to go back to stage plays. Within it, commonly slated that Augustin Daly's 1867 play Under the Gaslight by American was first. I'm reading Wikipedia. It does contain the scene where a character named Snorky is tied to the rails by a man named Bike. As he's doing this, Bike exclaims, "I'm going to put you to bed. You won't toss much. In less than 10 minutes, you'll be sound asleep. There, how do you like it? You'll get down to the branch before me, will you, you dog, and play the eavesdropper, eh? Now do it if you can, when you hear the thunder under your head and see the lights dancing in your eyes and feel the iron wheels a foot from your neck. Remember, Bike." Okay. But has anyone ever actually been tied to the railroad tracks? That was way too long cut and paste in that way. Turns out, while it's rare, yes, there are several known instances of this happening. For example, according to the August 31st, 1874 issue of the New York Times, a Frenchman identified in the paper simply as Gardner was killed in this exact manner after being robbed and tied to a railway track. However, in this specific case, the unfortunate Frenchman was able to partially free himself, with the result being only the lower half of his leg being severed. Gardner survived long enough to offer a description of his attackers to the authorities before succumbing to his injuries. In 2017, another French guy named Guillaume was suffering from severe depression when efforts to get back together with his estranged wife, Emilie, failed. He decided on her 34th birthday to bind her to a high-speed railway track using, quote, strong adhesive tape, and then stood over her as the train approached. Sadly, real life being real life, there is no dashing hero to save the day. And tragically for the couple, their toddler child and other respective children, the pair were killed instantly when the train hit them at a reported 200 miles an hour. All right. Casey is making the furnace get hotter and hotter like it's April O'Neil to make it go faster and faster like it's April O'Neil. Some guy blows up the bridge and the train drops, but Casey, without tracks, drives it back up the cliff. Bad guy attacks with guns and he beats them all with his shovel. Now there's a train coming straight for his train and he makes it too fast and it goes faster, 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 and the trains collide at the end. All right. Was Casey Jones a real person? Casey Jones was a locomotive engineer who became a folk hero after his death in a train crash in 1900. He was commemorated in a number of songs. According to legend, Jones died with one hand on the train's whistle and the other hand on its brake. The tape ends with grumpy James Earl Jones telling us, "Look for the heroes around you and celebrate them. You can find them in the past, in the present, even in the mirror."
That's what I think about.
What do you think?
What we have is a concern about Curtis Anderson. His interviewing style is not the best. His personal appearance is not the best. I was wondering if the man has some kind of a hold over the channel that he's allowed to be employed for so long with the standards of journalism and personal appearance that he has. Thank you.